Welcome to Zoology Classroom. In today's class, we are going to discuss about central nervous system, insect to vertebrate comparison. This topic comes under MSc Zoology 4th semester, comparative animal physiology paper. So nervous system is very important one in the bodies of animals. So coming to the importance of nervous system, nervous system plays a very important role in coordinating all the bodily activities, and it also regulates the functions of remaining parts in our body. So regulation and coordination is a very important function, and we can call it as the chief of our body, chief system in our body. So without nervous system, we cannot survive. Why? Because it controls, it regulates all the other organ systems, and it also responsible for receiving the information coming from surroundings of the body. So, and in higher organisms, higher level animals, we can find in the nervous system, three parts will be there: central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and autonomic nervous system. In central nervous system, two major parts are there. One is brain and another one is spinal cord. In peripheral nervous system, the nerves coming from these two, brain and spinal cord, will be there. Nerves coming from brain are called as cranial nerves, and the nerves coming from spinal cord are called as spinal nerves. So both these nerves, they make the peripheral nervous system. And third one is autonomic nervous system. Mostly autonomic nervous system will not have any separate special structures. Some of the structures which are present in this central nervous system and peripheral nervous system, along with some special neurons, autonomic nervous system will form into two types, two systems. One is sympathetic nervous system, another one is parasympathetic nervous system. So in today's class, we will be confining to the central nervous system, that too from insects, from arthropods to vertebrates. So how the development of central nervous system has taken place from arthropods to vertebrates. So coming to the arthropods, in arthropods nervous system, these arthropods are all invertebrates. So they will be having a ventral nerve cord will be there in them, and they are very lower level of organisms. So the central nervous system also has not developed much in these organisms. So in the central nervous system of arthropods, different types of arthropods are there. Whatever group it is, in arthropods, several groups are there, several classes are there. Whatever class it is, all the arthropods will be having the same basic plan of the central nervous system. They will be having a brain, and they will be having a brain is called supraesophageal ganglia, and also they will be having some subesophageal ganglia. Both these two ganglia, supraesophageal ganglia and subesophageal ganglia, both these two things will be connected with each other by a pair of connectives. So supra connectives and subganglia, all these things, they will form a ring-like structure. This is called a brain ring. So similar type of brain ring also can be seen in annelids also. So this brain ring will be seen in all arthropods. And after this subesophageal ganglia, we can see the ventral nerve cord. So in the ventral nerve cord, many ganglia will be there. Usually in the thorax region, 3 ganglia will be there, and in the abdominal region, abdominal ganglia, usually they will be in some animals they will be 5, and 5 to 8 ganglia will be there in arthropods. So the number of the abdominal ganglia varies from one arthropod to another arthropod depending on the body plan of the arthropod groups. So depending on the body plans, the number of ganglia may change, and usually 3 thoracic ganglia will be there in insects. These 3 thoracic ganglia also may fuse in some animals, like here we can see in E diagram. These 3 thoracic ganglia have fused and they are made into only single thoracic ganglia. In some cases, the latter two ganglia will be fused and the first one will be separated. So here in this case, in the third diagram, we can see two ganglia only apart from this three ganglia. So in place of three ganglia, two only will be there. Why? Because the second one and third one are fused and they are formed into a bigger fused ganglia. So like this, some changes will be there. And here in this thing also, we can see in this slide, a crayfish central nervous system and a grasshopper central nervous system. Grasshopper is an insect and a crayfish is a crustacean. So in crustaceans also, we can see brain is there, and this is the nerve ring, and this is the sub-esophageal ganglia, and later this one, 2, 3, these three are the thoracic ganglia, and later the remaining ones are abdominal ganglia. So here also we can find the same thing. So thoracic ganglia are there, and abdominal ganglia, and above the esophagus, supraesophageal ganglia, below the esophagus, subesophageal ganglia. Both these two things are connected with connectives, nerve connectives, making a nerve ring. So, and coming to this structure of this ventral nerve cord, and coming to the brain, in the brain, usually we can see three pairs of ganglia in the supraesophageal ganglia. So brain is having three pairs of ganglia. These three pairs are called as protocerebrum, first one, second one is deutocerebrum, and third one is tritocerebrum. Protocerebrum, deutocerebrum, and tritocerebrum. These three pairs of ganglia, they will supply nerves to the eyes and antennae, and remaining this thing, frontal ganglia will be there. This frontal ganglia, it will supply nerves to the mouth parts like that. And subesophageal ganglia also sends nerves to the some of the mouth parts, and remaining are the thoracic ganglia and abdominal ganglia. These are segmental ganglia. Thoracic and abdominal ganglia are segmental ganglia. They will send nerves to the body parts which are present in respective septum or respective segments. And this ventral nerve cord, it is present on the ventral side of the body. Actually, it is having two separate nerve cords. Two ventral nerve cords are there. These two ventral nerve cords are horizontally, they are connected with each other. And the ganglia are connected. The ganglia of alternate, alternate chambers or alternate septums or alternate alternate segments. Alternate segments of the body parts. The segments, the ganglia of the alternate segments are also connected with vertical vertical nerves. So in this way, the ganglia of the same segment are connected horizontally. The ganglia of neighboring segments are connected with vertical things. So in this way, actually we can we will see them as a single structure, single dorsal single ventral nerve cord, but there are two ventral nerve cords are there. These two ventral nerve cords are covered by a single sheath, so that when we dissect the animals, we will find only one, but there are actually two ventral nerve cords are there, and they are solid, unlike vertebrates. In vertebrates, nerve cord is dorsal and it is hollow. But here in these all invertebrates, ventral nerve cord is solid, unlike vertebrates. And coming to the next phyla, that is mollusca. In mollusca, in this picture, we are seeing phyla Globosa central nervous system. In the phyla Globosa central nervous system, we can see the one pair of ganglia, cerebral ganglia. These two are the cerebral ganglia, one pair of cerebral ganglia. And in front of the cerebral ganglia, a pair of small buccal ganglia are there. These buccal ganglia are connected to the cerebral ganglia with connectives, and these two buccal ganglia are connected with each other with commissure. So here we have to see the difference between commissure and connective. When a ganglia is connected with other ganglia, then the connection, the link is called connective. When the connective is joining the same pair of ganglia, then it is called commissure. So commissure will be horizontal in position, connectives will be vertical in position. Connectives will connect to different ganglia. So these buccal ganglia are connected to cerebrum with cerebrobuccal connectives. And again, these cerebral ganglia in behind position, they will connect it to two other pairs of ganglia. They are pedal ganglia and pleural ganglia. Pedal ganglia, it will send nerves to the foot region, and pleural ganglia, it will send nerves to the gas chamber or pulmonary chamber of the or pallium of the gas chamber. So the respiratory organ will receive nerves from this pleural ganglia, and from this pedopleural ganglia. From this pedopleural ganglia, another connective will go behind, and almost at the end of these connective, there will be a pair of visceral ganglia. And these visceral ganglia, they will send nerves to remaining visceral organs in the body. So here in this molluscans, we can see a pair of cerebral ganglia, a pair of buccal ganglia, and a pair of pedal ganglia, a pair of pleural ganglia, and a pair of visceral ganglia. So these are the ganglia that are seen in these organisms. These molluscans are also not highly developed organisms. Their nervous system, central nervous system, is also very, very simple. And this is the nervous system of sepia. Sepia belongs to class cephalopoda. Cephalopodans are highly developed in mollusca group. So in this sepia, we can see somewhat a developed condition in the central nervous system. So here in this cerebral ganglia, they are highly developed in this sepia and all remaining cephalopoda group organisms. So this is looks very simple, but when compared to other molluscans, the nervous system, central nervous system of cephalopods is also highly developed. So and here we can see a stellate ganglia, and apart from the stellate ganglia, remaining ganglia, buccal ganglia and cerebral ganglia, pleural ganglia, all ganglia are aggregated in the at the same place, so that they make a complex structure in these organisms. So here in this cephalopodans, we can find somewhat a developed condition in the central nervous system. And in this picture, we can see here the A picture is the basic plan of the central nervous system in molluscans, and different groups are there in the mollusca. Bivalvia is there, Scapopoda is there, Cephalopoda is there, and Gastropoda and Monoplacopoda. So all these different groups are having different body plans. So depending on their body plans, some changes have been made. Some changes have been occurred in the central nervous system plan in respective group. So out of all these groups, we can find highly developed condition in cephalopoda group only. So and coming to the next group, that is Echinodermata. Echinodermata, the organisms of Echinodermata are having very, very poorly developed nervous system, as they are confined to a bottom lifestyle or a sedentary lifestyle in most cases. And they have got a pentamerous structure. The body plan is having a pentamerous structure, so that according to their body plan, the nervous system of these organisms also had got some changes in them. So in this, a ring will be there, nerve ring will be there. From this nerve ring into the 5 arms, 5 radial nerves will be going into this 5 different arms. So this is the very simplest nervous system. So here in this echinodermates, we cannot find a brain-like structure, unlike arthropods and molluscans. When compared to arthropods, molluscans and when compared to echinodermates, arthropods and molluscans are having a highly developed central nervous system. So even though the Echinodermata is the highly developed or the it is evolved later in the course of timeline than these Echinodermates, than these arthropods and molluscans, but due to its lifestyle, it has got some degeneration in its central nervous system. So this degeneration in the nervous system is secondary, but it is not primary. due to their lifestyle, due to the accommodations or due to the adaptations, they have got these changes in the nervous system. So these are the degenerations. And coming to the chordates, in the chordates, this what first head mania, urochordata. In urochordata, during the larval stage only, we can find a dorsal nerve cord. But in this dorsal nerve cord also, brain region cannot be clearly seen in the larval stage. Once the larva develops into adult, that development is called retrogressive metamorphosis. This retrogressive metamorphosis results in the complete degeneration of nervous system. In the larval stage, it will be having somewhat developed dorsal nerve cord, but this dorsal nerve cord remains as a single nerve ganglion in adult stage. From the single nerve ganglion, few nerves will be arising, and these few nerves will be sending signals for the functioning of the important body parts of the adult head mania. So in this way, head mania or urochordates are having very, very degenerated central nervous system in them. Otherwise, we can say in adult stage, there is no central nervous system at all. And in Amphioxus or cephalopods, in cephalopods, cephalopods are model chordates. They will be possessing all required characters of chordates in them. So dorsal nerve cord will be there in these organisms, and in the cephalic region, somewhat developed brain region also can be seen. But this is very, very less developed when compared to other chordates. Remaining chordates are called as higher level chordates. They are called vertebrates. Whereas this Amphioxus, it is not a vertebrate. Even though it is a chordate, it is not a vertebrate. Why? Because vertebrae are not developed. In remaining organisms, vertebrae will be there. These vertebrae will be protecting the spinal cord in remaining chordates, higher level chordates. So coming to the vertebrates. So in these vertebrates, we are having 5 major groups: fishes, reptiles, amphibians, reptiles, aves, and mammals. Out of these 5 groups, these 3 groups are the simplest vertebrates, and aves and mammals are the somewhat complex vertebrates. So in all these 5 groups of vertebrates, brain becomes much larger, and it becomes more complex in structure as the evolution goes on. So from fishes to mammals, brain becomes larger and it becomes more complex as we go from fishes to mammals. And a series of swellings also will take place at the anterior end of the spinal cord. So in these, in the previous slide, we have seen this what Amphioxus, the anterior end of the spinal cord is somewhat swelled. It has some swelling in the anterior end, so we call it as a brain. But here in these from fishes to mammals, the anterior part of the spinal cord receives gets a series of swellings, and all these swellings or all these enlargements, they are making a brain. So that is called cephalization. So cephalization has taken place from fishes to amphibians, and as we go up from fishes to mammals, the cephalization also grows in size and as well as in terms of complexity also. And spinal cord, it will be protected by vertebrae in all these 5 groups. And nerves coming from the spinal cord, they form the two-way communication. Some branches or some fibers in these nerves, they will receive signals from body parts and send signals to brain. And some other fibers in these nerves and spinal cord, they will send signals from brain to body parts only. So those who send signals to brain are called as ascending sensory pathways, and those who send signals from brain to body parts are called as descending pathways or motor pathways. In this way, in the spinal cord, we can find 2 types of pathways: descending pathway or motor pathway, another one ascending pathway and sensory pathway. So likewise, in case of nerves coming from the spinal cord also, some nerves will be completely developed or completely converted into motor nerves, and some nerves will be in the form of sensory nerves. In some cases, a few nerves where they are having both these sensory pathways and motor pathways, such type of nerves are called as mixed nerves. So evolution of the vertebrate brain. So as we have already seen in the previous slide, the anterior end of the spinal cord will be getting the swellings or enlargements. So three major enlargements will be there, or three major bulges will be there. So these three major bulges are called as procephalon. This procephalon is also called as forebrain, and mesencephalon, and it is called as midbrain, and third last one is called rhombencephalon. It is called as hindbrain. So three major swellings will be there, or three major enlargements will be there, and these three major enlargements are also become more complex as the evolution occurred from fishes to mammals. So, and these complexities have resulted in the development of further more subparts in these forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. So usually this procephalon, see, we can see here in this part, up to this region, this is the spinal cord, and the anterior end of the spinal cord resulted in some enlargements, three enlargements. The last one is called procephalon, middle one mesencephalon, third one is the rhombencephalon. So the procephalon or forebrain, it is designated for receiving smell sensation, and the middle part of the brain is designated for or allotted for receiving the vision signals, and third hindbrain is allotted for receiving hearing sensation. So likewise, these three are allotted for, these three brain parts are allotted for three different receiving three different primary senses. And in the course of development from fishes to mammals, the brain size, relative size of the brain is constant in fishes, amphibians, and reptiles. That means the brain size is the ratio between brain size and body is in constant proportion in fishes and amphibians. But whereas in birds and mammals, the ratio between brain and body size increases a lot. That means their body size is very small when compared to the brain size in birds and mammals. That means in birds and mammals, brain is developed a lot when compared to fishes and amphibians. Say, for example, in fishes, let us take an example of dogfish, Scoliodon. Okay, Scoliodon are dogfishes. They are very big in size, but these also will be having a big brain when compared to our brain. So dogfish brain is very big than our brain, but that doesn't mean that the ratio, when coming to the ratio, our brain to body ratio is much more than this brain to body ratio of dogfish. Why? Because dogfish body is very big in size, and the brain size is also in relatively, it is in directly proportion to the body size of the dogfish. Whereas all mammals and all birds, they are having a more brain part than their body part. So in this way, the relative proportion of brain is high in these birds and mammals. And upon not only the development in this relative size of brain, there also some compartmentalization also taken place in the birds and mammals. So the three major parts of the brain, forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain, they also have got some other subcompartments in them for conducting or for performing various different functions. So, apart from these compartmentalization, forebrain is also become more complex in these birds and especially in mammals. Forebrain becomes more complex, and it has developed some special structures which are not seen in fishes, amphibians, and reptiles. Due to these special structures only, which have taken place, originated in forebrain, the mammals have got so wise than remaining other vertebrates. And the complexity in the forebrain also resulted in the complexity in the behavior of all these organisms, and this also is responsible for the development of wisdom, knowledge, and memory in these mammals. So here in this slide, we can see this is the basic body plan, basic brain plan of vertebrates. So the forebrain, it will be having cerebrum region and olfactory bulges. This olfactory bulbs are they will be receiving olfaction from nostril region, and midbrain is also called as tectum, and this midbrain region will be having optic lobes in it, and the hind region will be having a cerebellum, which is responsible for controlling the body movements or muscular movements. Coordination is done by the cerebellum itself, and last part of the hindbrain continues as spinal cord, and below the cerebellum we will be having pons varoli, and medulla oblongata also will be there. So all these are very, very primitive in lampreys. So lampreys are the very jawless fishes. These are lampreys are jawless fishes, and sharks are this what cartilaginous fishes and osteichthyes fishes. So right from this lampreys to fishes, we can see in these organisms, in sharks, olfactory organs are highly developed when compared to remaining fishes. In remaining fishes, in osteichthyes fishes, eyeballs or middle brain is highly developed than this olfaction function. So that's why sharks are highly dependent on olfaction sensation, and remaining osteichthyes fishes, they are highly dependent on vision than olfaction. And in amphibians also olfaction plays somewhat important role, and vision also plays important role in amphibians. And in reptiles also olfactory organs are highly developed in these organisms. Cerebrum up to these organisms, cerebrum region is not that much developed until up to this reptile organ. Cerebrum region, as we can see in this slide, it is highly developed in birds, and much more complex in mammals. So one more thing that we can see in this slide is that development of cerebellum. Cerebellum is a part in the hindbrain, so it is convoluted in birds and mammals. So the cerebellum is very, very important in controlling the body movements and in coordinating the body movements. So if we want to maintain balance in our body position, the cerebellum has to function normally. If there is an abnormality or dysfunction in cerebellum, we cannot have balance in our body. So this part will not function in the people who consume alcohol. That's why those people who consume alcohol, they cannot walk properly due to the loss of balance. Why? Because cerebellum will stop working for some time after consuming alcohol. So in these organisms, as birds fly high in the in the air, so their body requires to maintain balance. For that purpose, cerebellum is highly developed in all birds, and for the same reason, in these organisms, mammals also, cerebellum is highly developed. Most of the mammals, they run fastly, and coming to primates, they walk on hind legs only or hind limbs only, so that while they are walking in upright position, their body also need to be maintained balance. So for that purpose, in mammals and birds, cerebellum has developed, and it has got many convolutions in its parts. The convolutions, they will increase the surface area, and it can accommodate a lot of neurons due to these convolutions. And in birds, the eyes also, eye lobes are also highly developed. Why? Because some birds, they fly almost like 1 kilometer high in the sky. From that height also, they need to search for their prey organisms or food organisms. So for that purpose, their vision requires to be good. For that purpose, their eye lobes are highly developed in these organisms. And in convolutions in the forebrain has taken place in mammals only. These convolutions accommodate more neurons, and surface area also increases due to this. So in mammals, intelligence has taken place in mammals due to these convolutions only. And these convolutions are very high in primates, especially in human beings when compared to other organisms. So, and divisions and vesicles in the brain region, in the forebrain, we can find two vesicles or ventricles. We call these as two ventricles, paraventricles, and the third ventricle will be there in the midbrain, and In the hindbrain, fourth ventricle will be there. All these ventricles are connected to each other. And these ventricle is nothing but a hollow space. In this hollow space, a liquid will be there, cerebrospinal fluid. And this fourth ventricle will be in continuity with the neural canal of the spinal cord. So the neural canal and these four ventricles are in continuous connection, and all these will be having this liquid called as cerebrospinal fluid. It will provide nutrition to the neuron cells which are present in brain and spinal cord. And forebrain, it will be having a part called as diencephalon. Optic chiasma will be there in this forebrain region. Pituitary gland will be there on the bottom of this forebrain. It is connected to the brain, pituitary gland. Saccus vasculosus also will be there. It is posterior to the pituitary in some fishes, and in those fishes, the saccus vasculosus acts as a depth receptor. And hypothalamus, it is bottom part of the floor of the diencephalon or forebrain. It acts as a center for the autonomic nervous system, and thalamus is the sideways of the forebrain, or walls of the diencephalon or walls of the forebrain is called as thalamus, and upper portion is called as epithalamus. And in this brain region only, here third ventricle cavity is there. In this slide it is wrong. In this this thing, first and second ventricles will be there, and it communicates with this lateral ventricles. So foramen of Monro will be there in between these two lateral ventricles, are first and second ventricles. So, and epithalamus is the roof of the diencephalon, or roof of the forebrain. It will be having several evaginations, and it will also be having a paraphysis in anterior position. Epiphysis also will be there, and from this epiphysis, pineal eye will be there in some animals. This pineal eye helps in receiving photoreception, and parapineal also will be there. It acts as a third eye in those organisms. And another part in forebrain is telencephalon. In this telencephalon, cerebral hemispheres will be there posteriorly, and in anterior direction, rhinocephalon will be there. This rhinocephalon acts as a olfactory center, and in lower vertebrates, this rhinocephalon is prominent, as we have seen in dogfishes. In some other lower vertebrates, these olfactory bulbs are highly developed. This olfactory bulb region is called as rhinocephalon, and this later position is called as cerebral hemispheres. These cerebral hemispheres will be having first and second ventricles or lateral ventricles. These two lateral ventricles will be connected here with foramen of Monro. In higher vertebrates, these hemispheres increase in size, and olfactory lobes become small in size. And in midbrain, third ventricle will be there, and midbrain consists of optic lobes. In some organisms, two optic lobes will be there. Then they will be called as corpora bigemina. In some organisms, apart from these two optic lobes, ear lobes also will be there. When four lobes are there, then they are called as corpora quadrigemina. This ventricle, third ventricle, disappears in higher organisms, high level of vertebrates. Third ventricle decreases in size. It also will be having cerebral aqueduct, and this cerebral aqueduct also becomes narrow in higher level animals. Then it will be called as aqueduct of Sylvius. So when two optic lobes are there, it is called as corpora bigemina. When four, it is called as corpora quadrigemina in these organisms. Corpora bigemina, optic lobes are called as inferior caliculi, and in optic lobes are called as superior caliculi, and auditory lobes, two auditory lobes are called as inferior caliculi. When four lobes are there, then that condition is called as corpora quadrigemina. So in hindbrain, myelencephalon region will be there. In this medulla oblongata will be there, and this medulla oblongata is a involuntary center. All major functions of heartbeat, like respiration, all these things are in control of this medulla oblongata. Involuntary reflexes also will be controlled by medulla oblongata. Vagal lobe also will be there. Vagus nerve arises from this myelencephalon. Another part in hindbrain is metencephalon. And in this metencephalon, it will be dorsal in position. Cerebellum or small brain will be there in this metencephalon. And this is responsible for control of the skeletal muscles or maintaining the body balance, cerebellum. And pons will be there. Later, pons continues as a medulla oblongata, and this medulla oblongata finally continues as a spinal cord. So in this hindbrain, fourth ventricle will be there. Here, two cerebral hemispheres. This is wrong in this slide. So fourth ventricle will be there in the hindbrain, and this fourth ventricle continues to the neural canal in the cerebral spinal cord. So here in this slide, we can see the evolution of brain from fishes to mammals. And as we have already seen, fish brains, their brain is very smooth. Convolutions will not be there. Gyrus sulci will not be there. Pallium is very smooth in dorsal position, and in ventral position, globus pallidus will be there. And this is the brain of a fish. And in amphibians also, the same structure will be there, but here we can see the cerebrum region is started dividing into two parts, like two cerebral hemispheres in these amphibians. And in reptiles, the division is complete. In these organisms, cerebrum will be completely divided into right and left part. And in these organisms, visual, auditory, and sensory stimuli will be received from these lateral ventricles or brain region. And in birds are also, as we have seen in them, cerebellum region is highly developed, and optic lobes are also highly developed, and cerebrum is also highly developed than previous vertebrate groups. In mammals, neocerebrum and neocortex, these are the two structures that are newly developed. We cannot see these two structures in remaining vertebrate groups. And this neocerebellum is at the base of the brain, and neocortex, it is present in the forebrain. This neocortex is responsible for wisdom and memory in mammals, and neocerebellum is at the base of the cerebellum region. And in these organisms, the limbic system is also developed. Limbic system cannot be seen in any other group of organisms, vertebrates. So this limbic system developed in mammals some 200 to 300 million years ago. This limbic system is also called as mammalian brain. It is seen only in highly developed mammals. And in human brain also, we can find a plasticity. So plasticity, it is nothing but memory. So due to plasticity feature only, we are able to remember things. So this is responsible for memory. This is highly developed in human beings than in other organisms. So coming to cranial nerves, cranial nerves are 12 in amniotes. In anamniotes, they are 10 only. And in the spinal cord also, you all can take the screenshot of this one. Time is less than 1 minute. So if you have any doubts, you can tell me in WhatsApp, then we can meet again. So in spinal cord also, some changes are there. All these things are mentioned here in this slide. So I'm not going to repeat this thing because no time is there. So with this, let us conclude this topic.